I had been a medic for 19 years before I ever stood in a room I was told not to enter. The isolation wing sat at the far end of the outpost, past 3 sealed doors and a sign that said nothing, because nobody wanted to write down what was actually behind it. I went in anyway, because that was my job, and because the duty roster had my name on it whether anyone liked it or not. She was sitting against the back wall when I found her, knees drawn up, her skin a pale gray blue, with a faint amber undercurrent that pulsed slow, like a coal breathing under ash. Her hair was the color of a dying ember, long and matted with neglect. Her eyes, when she finally lifted them to me, were molten gold, and they did not look afraid. They looked tired, the way a person looks when they have stopped expecting anyone to walk through that door. "You should not be in here," she said. Her voice was even, careful, like she was used to warning people away before they learned the hard way. "I've had worse warnings," I said, and set my case down. Her name, the record said, was Alira Sayel, last queen of a dying sun world. Her body had become something her own people called a curse. She carried her world's collapsing star inside her skin, radiance that could blister flesh at a touch. They had not executed her. That would have been a mercy. They had simply left her here, sealed away, and let time do what fear would not. I ran the scans from across the room first. Burn radius 8 feet at full output, lower when she was calm. Her vitals were a wreck: dehydration, infection in a wound on her side nobody had treated, the slow starvation of someone who had not been fed properly in longer than she'd admit. "Don't waste medicine on me," she said, when I opened the case. "I won't be here long enough for it to matter." "That's not your call, it's mine. I'm the medic." She almost laughed. It came out as something smaller, sadder. "No one has corrected me in a long time." I worked for 3 days before I touched her with my bare hands, because I had to build something that would let me. The outpost had old reactor-shielding cloth in storage, the kind meant for engine work, not medicine. I cut it down, layered it, lined it with cooling gel scavenged from a busted suit nobody used anymore. It wasn't elegant. It looked like something a desperate man builds in a supply closet, because that's exactly what it was. When I finally pressed 2 gloved fingers to the pulse point at her wrist, and the meter held steady instead of screaming, she went very still. "You shouldn't have done that," she said quietly. "I did the math. I'll live." That's not what I meant. She was looking at my hand like it was the strangest thing she'd seen in years. "No one has touched me since I was 16 years old." I didn't have an answer for that, so I didn't give her one. I just finished cleaning the wound on her side, the way I would for anyone, because that's what a wound asks for, regardless of what's underneath the skin holding it shut. By the 6th day I had learned the rhythm of her. How her light dimmed when she slept, banked low like a stove left to its coals. How it flared, just slightly, when she was angry, or frightened, or, once, when I made some flat joke about the outpost coffee, almost amused. I started timing my visits to that rhythm, coming in soft when the burn radius reading dropped, talking through the door first so she'd know it was me, and not another envoy come to finish what the court had started. On the 7th day I brought her real food instead of the nutrient paste the requisition log allowed for quarantine cases. I'd traded for it, bartered painkillers I wasn't supposed to barter, for bread and dried fruit from the supply hold. She held the bread in both hands like she didn't trust it to be real. "This isn't rationed," she said. "No. You'll be reported for it." I've been reported for worse. I sat down across from her, far enough that the meter stayed quiet, close enough that we could talk without raising our voices. "Eat. You're not dying of radiance, Alira. You're dying of being left alone in a room. Those aren't the same thing, and I intend to fix the one I actually can." She ate slowly, like someone relearning a skill she'd forgotten she had. When she finished, she looked at me for a long moment, gold eyes steady in that pulsing gray-blue face, and said nothing at all, which by then, I'd learned was usually when she meant the most. Word came on the 9th day that her people were sending someone. I assumed rescue. I was wrong. The envoy was a thin, formal man named Quor, who looked at Alira the way you look at a fire you're hoping has finally gone out. He told me, with the patience of someone explaining something simple to a child, that the Queen's exile was a kindness already extended too far, that the merciful thing now was to let nature finish what the court had started, and that my interference was a violation of treaty protocol I likely did not understand. "I understand it fine," I said. You're asking me to let her die quietly so nobody has to watch. I am asking you to step aside from something that is not yours. I looked at Alira. She had pulled herself a little straighter against the wall, jaw set, eyes bright and steady on Quor, in a way I hadn't seen from her yet. Not fear, not the tired patience she'd shown me. Something colder, something that remembered, underneath all that neglect, what it had once meant to be a queen. Tell them, she said to him, that I decline the kindness. Quor's mouth thinned. Your Majesty, this is not... Tell them, she said again, and her voice carried in a way it hadn't before, that for the first time since I was sentenced to this room, a man has looked at me and not flinched. I will not trade that for your mercy. He looked at me like I was the disease itself. And you understand what you are risking, staying near her. I've understood it since the 3rd day, I said. I'm still here on the 9th. He left without another word, the way people do when they've lost an argument they didn't expect to be having. I didn't know, standing there, whether the court would send someone harder next time, or whether they'd simply forget about this room again, the way they had before. I only knew I wasn't leaving it. That night she asked me why. Not angrily. Quietly. Like she'd been turning the question over for days, and finally found the nerve to spend it. Why does a man stay in a room that could kill him? For a woman his own kind doesn't even know is real? I thought about lying, making it sound noble, the way men do when they want the answer to sound bigger than it is. I didn't. Because you asked for the medicine not to be wasted on you. And I decided you were wrong about that. Somebody should have decided that a long time ago. I'm just the one who happened to walk through the door. She was quiet a long moment. Then she reached out, slow, careful, the way she did everything now, and rested her hand an inch from mine, close enough that the meter at my wrist gave a low warning hum, not close enough to burn. I won't ask you to stay, she said. I learned a long time ago not to ask people for things they might regret giving. Good, I said, because I wasn't asking permission. I didn't kiss her hand, or make a speech. I just sat there, in a shielded room, nobody else would enter, and let the silence hold the kind of weight that doesn't need filling. Outside, the outpost ran its quiet machinery, indifferent to either of us. In here, for the first time in longer than she could probably remember, somebody had chosen to stay. She didn't say thank you. Queens, I was learning, rarely do. She just looked at me with those molten gold eyes, steady now instead of tired, and said the only thing that mattered. Then I won't leave either. I built a second suit the following week, sturdier, better sealed, so I could sit closer without the meter complaining every 5 minutes. It wasn't a cure, there wasn't one. But it was enough room for 2 people to exist in the same space without one of them having to disappear to make it safe. Some nights, she told me about the world she'd lost, the sun that had turned on its own people the way suns sometimes do. Some nights I told her about nothing in particular, just the ordinary noise of a life she'd never been allowed to hear before. Supply runs, broken equipment, small complaints, the dull music of a man who'd simply decided to keep showing up. Nobody ever wrote a treaty for what we were doing. There wasn't a category for it. But every morning, when I came back through that door nobody else would open, she was waiting, and the light in her didn't feel like a curse anymore. It felt like something worth standing close to, carefully, on purpose, for as long as I had left to give it.